and we're going to see 2 top 8 matchups where we are going to be starting with Ashton Cox going up against James Evans here. And we're talking about, you know, 2-time international champion, 2017 LAIC, 2019 LAIC, as well regional championships, notably as well as of recently 2nd place at the Orlando Pokemon Regional Championships, falling at Wolf Lick at that final battle. So a little chance at redemption here on the line to get a more recent regional spot. And this is definitely a really strong team to be able to do so with.
And Ashton rocking that cool Solgaleo hat, since a lot of Ashton's great accomplishments were during the Sun and Moon era of VGC, using that Solgaleo for fun. But you look at his team, Kingambit making it into the top 8. That was one of your predictions this weekend, Sierra, to have a strong performance. And it's going to actually be on both of the teams here in this top 8 matchup. It's a Pokemon that can really just take over a game if you get any type of Defiant boost on that side. There are no Intimidates on the other end. However, there is a Snarl, so if the Raging Bolt accidentally snarls and activates Defiant on Kingambit, it's going to be really good for Ashton to try to sweep with that Pokemon.
That'd have to be a pretty accident there. Fun fact from Ashton, has a fight to catch. I mean, hey, there is the possibility that James Evans can let you go get that flight on time. Do not worry. The travel pillow makes so much sense. Also, amazing.
He's got his travel pillow ready for the flight in case he loses already.
Yeah, no, he is so ready. And he's going to be going up against James Evans, as we said. You're talking about the International Championship, also a world champion in the seniors division. Most recently to 2nd place Knoxville Regional Finals, falling just at that final hurdle to Toller Webb. So I feel like there's a little bit of redemption on the line here for both of these trainers when we're looking at more recent regional titles.
Yeah, and I love how James has matured as a player over the last couple seasons in VGC. He's always a threat, a perennial top cut player, and trying to look for his first Masters Division regional championship. There is the Kingambit, as I mentioned, that is on both of these teams. But one thing that really stands out to me is the gouging fire in this matchup. Breaking Swipe could be scary because you don't want to accidentally activate Defiant on the other end, but into most of Ashton's Pokemon, Heat Crash does work. And this Rillaboom is also, maybe you're like, oh, if the Amoonguss is just going to put it to sleep, Rillaboom has access to Taunt to stop the Spore. So I really do want to see how how the Gouging Fire can do against Ashton's team.
Fun fact, James Evans believes that as long as there is delusion, there is hope. We're getting deep here. So like very philosophical. We're going into like you can tell he's going to art school. He's got the scarf. He's got the quote.
I was going to say the scarf is a dead giveaway.
We're getting serious.
Might as well
here.
put to be or not to be at this point.
100%. But smiles all around from these 2 trainers here this weekend. 2 top trainers as well, rooming together for this event. So you know that they've chatted about this event, I'm sure, quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think the Kingambit, if either of them can get a Defiant activation on their sides, they don't have, or at least on James's end, he does not have a fighting attack there, and neither does Ashton. So you might be doing a lot of resisted damage there, but any type of Defiant boost is just going to be so problematic. We don't see Kingambits yet to start off this game 1, though.
No, instead, Landorus Eye. It's done so much today. Going to be on James's end of the field. Next to that, Rillaboom, Amoonguss, and Raging Bolt for Ashton. Raging Bolt as well. We've talked about the different types of Raging Bolt that we can see. Both trainers here going for the one trainer, only one of them has it, the Kingambits is the one that's shared, but it's going to be the Assault Vest over on Ashton's end. So making sure that you don't have to protect here, so Fake Out could have happened. Instead, into the Amoonguss, Raging Bolt will take a very powerful hit, though, from that Landorus.
I was going to say, he does have the option to Terra Fairy, but he doesn't need it because you just barely hang on and do a lot of damage with Draco.
At this point, too, Draco Meteor, sure, a lot of damage into the Rillaboom, but it does have the priority in that Grassy Glide next turn around. Of course, resisted hit, but that Raging Bolt just has a sliver of health at this point.
And that tells you that Ashton, since he didn't want to commit Terra Fairy on turn 1, that means he wants to save Terrassalization for something more important in the back later. You also find yourself in a tough spot. If you Terra to avoid the Earth Power and become a Fairy type, then Landorus just has a Sludge Bomb anyway and can hit you super effectively. That Rillaboom, as you mentioned, with its Grassy Glide, would be able to have the priority to move before the Raging Bolt can. And of course, as a Grass type, those attacks cannot be redirected by Rage Powder. So James definitely got I would say the better exchange of the 2 damages that were output on that previous turn, because Ashton has lost 2 stages of special attack from the Draco Meteor and is potentially threatened by the priority Grassy Glide.
And with no terrestrialization on the Rillaboom, we'll see it on the Landorus instead into that poison type. Sludge Bomb going to be able to output a lot more damage from this point as that Grassy Glide does come out. Raging Bolt is going to be handled in this turn.
Sludge Bomb potentially into the Amoonguss slot, or turn, just trying to change its typing, really. Oh, Substitute, knowing that if Spore goes into that slot, it's not going to work.
Also love that setup. The Spore is not going to be able to... Oh,
he called a switch. Ashton is going aggressive here.
Hey, sometimes... What in Dawes' words, you have to buy a ticket to win the raffle,
Yes.
But in this case, it's just going to be lost on this turn. Spore, it wouldn't have done anything for either slot either way, and if you were thinking there was a Protect or a Substitute, to maybe try and call a swap, call something like a U-turn in this. But now losing your Raging Bolt, gotta see what you want to be bringing in. Of course, the Urshifu can be threatening, but it won't be doing the same amount of damage thanks to that Terra Poison Terastallization that already came out.
And free Substitute is one of the highest value plays you can get in VGC. By having the Substitute take no damage the prior turn, that means that this Chien-Pao is going to have to waste an attack into the sub just to break it. And your Rillaboom is still a threat. Might want to switch it out for later to save it to have priority Grassy Glides. But this Landorus behind the Substitute can't be spored, and you know that Chien-Pao is not going to be able to do too much damage to it. So James does get rewarded for Ashton's over-aggression towards that Rillaboom slot by having his Landorus safe and comfortable behind the Substitute.
Landorus is definitely a balanced Pokemon. It can be dealt with, but when it's behind a Substitute, it's definitely so much more difficult in Grassy Glide. That will be a good chunk of damage into that Chien-Pao. Ice Spinner, that is going to be a way to try and break that Substitute. It will be faded this turn around. So that is going to be nice as well. Making sure that the Grassy Terrain is no longer, so no more hits going. Earth Power into the Amoonguss though, bringing it down real low. It does have the Citrus Berry for this one, so it will be able to recover it back up, but I still don't know if it'll be able to survive another hit like that. Sludge Bomb, Rillaboom, that will be picking up the KO here.
James nodding his head there, kind of saying, okay, yeah, I probably should have protected my Rillaboom a little bit better on that turn. One, Ice Spinner gets rid of the Grassy Terrain, so you don't have priority anymore. And two, the Sludge Bomb, he was such low HP that any attack would be able to knock it out. Now you don't have Taunt. You are not able to Rage Powder, you're not able to, or excuse me, to stop the Rage Powder or stop the Spore on the other end. Gouging Fire did activate its booster energy there. Doesn't mind facing down against the Ice-type Chien-Pao and Grass-type Amoonguss on the other end. Amoonguss has also already eaten its berry, so you know it's not going to be able to recover any more HP unless it swaps out thanks to Regenerator.
Yeah, I wouldn't be worried about losing your Rillaboom for that taunt. I'd be worried if I was Ashton with that Amoonguss sitting down on the field. It's not going to be the Water Terra either, so it cannot Terra to get out a potential big Fire-type move coming out from that Gouging Fire. Hit Sucker Punch into the Landorus, not enough for the KO, and the Heat Crash will be picking up the KO onto that Amoonguss. Now, all of a sudden, we just have two Pokemon left for Ashton's end of the field in the first match, and I think it's going to be rocked right down to one. Earth Power will take care of the Chien-Pao.
Yeah, Ashton down to that last Pokemon. Sword of Ruin also hurting Amoonguss there by having it do more damage by having its defense lowered. Urshifu is a great Pokemon to have as your final Pokemon in a match, but what can it do against three of James's Pokemon when there's no spread attacks? You can only go for one Surging Strikes at a time, and the Gouging Fire is a neutral hit into the Surging Strike, so it probably wouldn't even be enough for one turn to be able to knock it out.
Hey, we're going for what we can, though. It's top 8, nothing to lose. Terastallization into the Water type from the Urshifu at this point. Do as much as you can. That'll be the Breaking Swipe to deal a chunk of damage into it. Of course, when you're looking at the critical hits, the attack drop is not going to matter in this case. The Surging Strikes will come out. Taking care of the Landorus first off. Only need the one hit to get it done, and James down to final 2 as well.
And at least Ashton does get to learn here in this spot James's 4th Pokemon. He can still try. You know, on Ashton's end, there's nothing else he can do. He has Choice Scarf, and he's locked in to the Surging Strike. So now is the perfect time to bring out Ogerpon Wellspring, who is just going to be able to redirect those attacks away. And even if the Breaking Swipe and the Heat Crash are resisted attacks into the Water or Urshifu on the other end, eventually that will still be able to stack up enough to get the knockouts onto Urshifu. So James is 2 Pokemon right now, just in such a great spot against Ashton's Urshifu.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why this Ogerpon I mean, has just been so good. It maybe dropped down in usage, but it's still matching up against the Urshifu just so good. It's not going to be able to do anything at this point because of that water absorb coming on out. So as soon as that Ogerpon hit the field, it was as good as done. Opportunity for Ashton to just play this out, figure out what he wants to be doing for this match number 2.
Yeah, this is something you'll see a lot of top trainers do often. Even when a match is settled, you don't just forfeit right away. Give yourself essentially additional time for the next team preview. Instead of just having the 90 seconds of the team preview before game 2, you can take these last 2 or 3 minutes of game 1 to give yourself the ideas of how do I adjust, where did I go wrong in game 1, and what adjustments do I need to try to win game 2.
Yeah, looking at it, just the fact that this Raging Bolt, I mean, it got a powerful hit and then it got KO'd. It took so much from the Earth Powder, the Grassy Glide, good enough to be picking it off. So when I'm looking back at that match, that is what I'm looking for towards this. A way to better preserve that Raging Bolt if it's one of the Pokemon that you want to be bringing out.
Yeah, for sure. And none of James's Pokemon have the safety goggles, right? So in theory, the only one that is immune to Spore would be the Rillaboom. So if I'm on Ashton's end, I think getting value out of Terra Fairy Raging Bolt might have helped a little bit more than the Terra Water Urshifu when it was just too late in the game here. By being such in the red, the Grassy Glide would have been enough to knock it out no matter what. And the over-aggression of trying to spore, and the over-prediction, I should say, excuse me, of sporing the Rillaboom slot and allowing Landers to get the substitute for free was just really tough for Ashton to come back from.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see whereabouts he wants to be switching things up. I think the Rillaboom, just the fact that you did have that priority and you did have the fake out on the first turn to make sure the Amoonguss couldn't go for a Spore into Landers the first time around, which is really, really good. And I think, too, you need a little bit better pressure into this Landorus because we definitely have the Pokemon on Ashton's end that can threaten it. Sure, the Landorus can tear it to get out of a super effective hit, but you still have ways to neutrally hit it, and it isn't the bulkiest Pokemon out there. And forcing that Terastallization out means that it can't be used later on in the match with something like that Gouging Fire or whatnot. So some better way of attacking into that Landorus is what I'd like to see from the lead.
And it is tough for Ashton because his Ogerpon is that Hearth Flame form, so it kind of loses out to the opposing Ogerpon on the other side, and of course a Sludge Bomb from James's Landorus Incarnate. So maybe you try to opt for the Ogerpon Hearth Flame as your supportive grass type since you have access to Follow Me. Rillaboom is not able to stop Follow Me, right? It can stop Rage Powder from Amoonguss, but Follow Me will work into that slot and force James to try to target the Ogerpon Hearth Flame, which allows Raging Bolt to stay healthy.
See, what I'd actually want to see from the Ogerpon is not necessarily as that supportive type Follow Me, is I want to see some pressure. Those Ivy Cudgels, you can actually get into a lot of things over on James' end as well. When you're looking at the Ogerpon's 1v1, maybe it'll struggle a little bit, but looking at the rest of the team, those Ivy Cudgels can do a lot of damage. That Rillaboom, I'm sure that would not have been able to take that hit. That would be gone. It'll damage the Landorus and threaten it as well. So I would love to see even ways to just bring that out to actually have an attacking option into a variety of leads that James can have.
Rillaboom does have Terra Fire as well for James, so of course you get into those multiple mind games as the game does develop. If you're expecting the Fire Ivy Cudgel or even the Terastallization from Ogerpon Hearth Flame, you can turn into a Fire type on the Rillaboom to keep yourself helpful there. But we're going to get the same lead at least on James's end.
Yeah, swap out coming out from Ashton. We're going to have the double grass. It'll be the Ogerpon and that Amoonguss to start things off. So you have support and you have some pressure to try and face off against this lead that was a little problematic the first time around.
Rillaboom does have Fake Out for James's side, so you can decide which of Ashton's 2 grass types you would like to Fake Out on this turn. And this does allow Landers to just get some solid damage on the first turn. Both of these grass types would be hit neutrally by an Earth Power, so that's able to cover that. If you go for Earth Power, it's going to be pretty solid.
It'll be the Fake Out into the Ogerpon. No attempt at the Spiky Shield. And with that, knowing an attack isn't going to be coming out this turn regardless, James will take the opportunity to set up that substitute. Sludge Bomb, that is a lot of damage into the Rillaboom at this point. So definitely a way to start dealing with that Pokemon. But at this point, I'm more worried about this Landorus.
Well, and the Ashton kind of pinned Rillaboom there on James's side, right? You fake out the Ogerpon Hearthflame and then get hit by a Sludge Bomb. You fake out a Amoonguss, you get hit by an Ivy Cudgel, which would have been even worse. So a great turn one from Ashton to kind of change the tides, where last time around he just took way too much damage on his Raging Bolt. Now Rillaboom is the one that is being threatened by another knockout from a potential Sludge Bomb on Amoonguss' side. You don't have to worry about Taunt because you can go for a Sludge Bomb, or you can also follow me with the Ogerpon and kind of go for a more aggro Amoonguss trying to claim KOs onto the opposing Rillaboom.
At this point, have to see the Ivy Cudgel coming out from the Ogerpon to start things off, hitting into the Landorus. I definitely like that you're not allowing this Landorus to just freely sit there behind the substitute. At least break that from here on, so you can try and get that KO'd later. As Earth Power in response, a lot of damage to the Ogerpon, even as a neutral hit. Taunt from the Amoonguss to make sure there is no Spore, the double up potential into the Landorus. But the Amoonguss, as we saw, Sludge Bomb, more than enough. We saw how much it did the first time around. It'll take the KO onto the Rillaboom.
Yeah, that's a great call from Ashton, anticipating the taunt. James has taunt for a reason, right? He's opted to not run the most common Rillaboom set of Assault Vest for the value that taunt provides. So you know, don't go for Spore, don't go for Raging Powder. Let me try to knock out this Rillaboom, which was so crucial the last game. And now with Gouging Fire, it's going to be the fastest Pokemon on the field. Ogerpon's down really low, but Gouging Fire does not have a safety goggles. So if you're Amoonguss, who is Terra Fairy in this matchup, if you don't want to get knocked out by a potential Heat Crash on the other side, it depends on how important you think sporing the Gouging Fire is, compared to if you attempt to spore Landorus on the other side, but if James substitutes, it's not going to work.
Unfortunately, with the taunt the previous turn, that would have to be a swap in or waiting it out, in the Amoonguss in a tough position now, because the taunt means you can't even protect past this turn, and surely a double up into the slot can do a lot of damage. Gonna be the Ogerpon to swap out, since that was already so low. And this King Gambit, it is dangerous. Double swap from Ashton. The double swap sometimes, this can be so good or so bad. It just depends on how James targets down this turn. Breaking Swipe,
Defiant.
That is going to be Defiant for the King Gambit. It'll drop the attack, but it's going to get that +2 in return, bringing it at a +1 attack going on forward.
Where did Landorus target there? It's the Earth Power into Urshifu. Urshifu does go down, but all that does is let Ashton bring in one of his supportive Pokemon that can redirect attacks away from King Gambit.
And the thing is, too, with the swap out with the Amoonguss, you now have that option for that Rage Powder, making sure that this King Gambit that has that +1 attack can just start dealing some massive damage. So bringing the Amoonguss back in full health at this point, you can now really go on to the offensive. The King Gambit, this position, so dangerous, and Terrestrialization as well. You are going all out offensive. It's the Flying King Gambit over on Ashton, so making sure that you cannot get hit by another Earth Power.
Sucker Punch is not free though. In case James clicks substitute, the Sucker Punch would fail. So you don't want to waste a turn in a spot on King Gambit where your damage that's boosted by Defiant would be stopped if you attack into someone who doesn't go for an attack. But honestly, this Gouging Fire, there are 3 Pokemon on Ashton's end that really don't want to take a Heat Crash from the Gouging Fire. So the question is, which spot do you Terrestrialize on Ashton's side? Is it the Amoonguss so that you're not weak to Heat Crash for the rest of the game, or is it the Flying, as you mentioned, so you can avoid those Earth Powers?
Bringing Ogerpon out over on James's end. Not the only swap though. Amoonguss, as we saw, swapping out. So no Rage Powder, no redirection. Instead, bringing in his own Ogerpon at this point. We'll have to see where James wanted to be targeting with that Landorus, or if he did opt for a little bit more of a passive turn. But we're gonna have to wait till after this short animation.
Yeah, definitely the anticipation that we're waiting for here in game 2, turning into a poison type here, maybe having more damage output from your Sludge Bomb.
Make sure you can do as much as possible into the opposing slot, but not the only Terrestrialization. As we saw, King Gambit going to be into the Flying type. We get to see a variety of different Terras for the King Gambit, whether it's the Dark for the damage, whether it's resist like that Dragon. This one, the Flying, to make sure that you're not going to be getting hit by those ground moves. None coming out though. Protect from Landorus.
Protect working just like substitute in this spot, but the Sword Dance instead of Sucker, he's now +3 attack.
+1 wasn't enough, and a great way to take advantage of more passive turn coming out from James. Be so careful on, if you thought a +1 attack King Gambit was problematic, well, this +3 can be so much.
but Ogerpon on the other end, excuse me, has access to the follow me, which would redirect Sucker Punch away. So Ashton is going to have to use the normal speed tiers, go for a +3 kowtow cleave into whatever target he wants would be more than enough for the knockout. But does James just allow that? What do you value? Landorus is more important, or the gouging fire in the back that has that super crucial heat crash into so many of Ashton's Pokemon? That Swords Dance by Landorus protecting, it put Ashton in a much better spot, but Ogerpon can still redirect attacks away.
That's exactly it. Sure, maybe you don't want to be going for the Sucker Punch, but you do still have a way to be redirecting a hit away to make sure that you do not necessarily need the speed. You just need to make it past this turn. Now, both Follow Me's coming out from both Ogerpon's. Landorus first to act Sludge Bomb, just had to do so little to be picking up the KO. Now, on the opposing end, this +3 attack King Gambit, Kowtow Cleave, forcibly targeted into the Ogerpon, and it will claim a one-hit KO with it.
That is a massive amount of damage. Now, both of these trainers are down to their last 2 Pokemon remaining, but perfectly timed for James as the grassy terrain expires. Or excuse me, not the Rillaboom's gone. I'm not worried about him. The gouging fire is able to come back onto the field. You can't Breaking Swipe, right? You don't want to be silly and give it a defiant boost. But Amoonguss is just going to do the same role that Ogerpon Hearthflame did on the previous turns. Just try to keep this King Gambit safe. If Sucker Punch is too risky because of the threat of Substitute or Protect or anything like that, as long as Amoonguss is there to redirect, you can just Kowtow Cleave at the normal speed tiers.
Or eyeing up a Sucker Punch, though. Either way, looking into this turn, you also don't want to be hitting into a Burning Bulwark from the opposing Gouging Fire. You do not want all of those attack boosts that you have to go to waste with a potential burn. So Sucker Punching into that slot instead. If it doesn't ready up an attack, well, that move is going to fail at the end of it. No ready though, it will be the Sucker Punch, not going to pick up the KO. It's holding on, and now Heat Crash can fire off an attack. So little into the King Gambit, but now Landorus can attack. No redirection, and the double up will be enough to claim the KO.
James is popping off right now. He knew that was potentially a roll if the Sludge Bomb would be able to do enough damage, but Life Orb, Sheer Force, Landorus is just such a strong Pokemon.
I'm more so the Gouging Fire holding on past the +3 attack King Gambit hit. There was the risk, Ashton, when you don't redirect, you are at risk at losing that attacker, and the King Gambit going down is gonna spell disaster for him. James Evans to move on to top 4, a clean 2-0 victory.
And he takes out his roommate, but luckily Ashton can go catch his flight now. So kind of works out for both of the trainers here. I'm trying to think, Sierra, Ashton could have been thinking of a few turns in the future where even if Kowtow Cleave knocks out the Gouging Fire, you're still going to have the Sucker Punch mind games if Landorus knocks out Amoonguss, because Sucker Punch can get stopped by Substitute, can stop by Protect. So I think maybe he was thinking, hey, if I can Sucker Punch knock out Gouging Fire, then Gouging Fire can't Heat Crash the Amoonguss. I still have Rage Powder to keep it away. So Ashton might have been thinking a couple turns into the future there. Unfortunately, does not work out for him. Crucially, helping James with, I very surprised Gouging Fire lived the +3 Sucker Punch.
Yeah, barely, but Gouging Fire is pretty good. He has a little bit of bulk to him, and it's definitely proving off in spades this time around. And it's hard too, because all of a sudden, if there was like the Burning Bulwark and you had tried to hit a Kowtow Cleave into that, I mean, you just lose your main attacker on the spot. Not quite, you still have some attacking power to you, but it's not going to be to the same potential that you have. So definitely, if you play a little risky, sometimes that's how it goes, right? So it could have paid off huge, but in case, like, even if you just gotten that KO, this would have been still a different conversation right now.
Right, for sure. And Ashton, it was cool to see the Amoonguss just going on the offensive, knocking out Rillaboom, since the priority attacks from Rillaboom were one of the most frustrating things for Ashton to deal with in Game 1. But the Swords Dance on the turn that Ogerpon swapped in and Landorus went for a Protect was such a nice play from Ashton. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out for the victory, but still was the right call at the time.
It's always fun seeing the setup moves and where trainers can take advantage with them on the turn. So definitely great from Ashton to be calling for that. The King Gambit, unfortunately, just not able to quite get it done in the end there. As soon as that, I'm sure as soon as that gouging fire lives, because Landorus.
Well, you see, look at James's expression right there.
You gotta make sure, right? You gotta make sure, but it was still such a good job, super well played, and this team that James has is so strong.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how James fares in the top 4 matchup because he was able to bring multiple different Pokemon. The only one we didn't see was Fluttermane, actually. We saw the 5 other Pokemon from James in this set. So, of course, we know Fluttermane is a fantastic Pokemon. We'll see how the cards play out for who his opponent will be in top 4, but that was a 2-0 victory. I think Ashton in the 2 games was trying to be aggressive or make some strong predictions, because when you're playing against a trainer of the caliber of James, you can't just play it easy, right? You got to try to get into the mind games, into that headspace, and get him uncomfortable. But unfortunately, James's pre-game motivational poetry was able to keep him mentally strong.
Well, that's the secret.
You saw the scarf?
The hot dog costume is not enough. You have to get philosophical with it. You bring out the quotes, you sit and reflect during some matches. No, but jokes aside, it was still super, super well done. I mean, James has shown through the season, he's always been a consistent player. I mean, we've gotten to see from his Worlds victory to then getting a Masters and then his international victory and just his consistent placements at event. Very consistent player, just getting second at, I believe it was Charlotte. So like this is the run back. Like, is this the time?
Yeah, I think it would be definitely exciting if James would come home with the title here in Vancouver. But congratulations to Ashton making it to top 8. Go catch your flight. You look like you're going to be comfy with your neck pillow anyway. But for now, we're going to head over to Gabby with our winner of that top 8 matchup, James Evans. So Gabby, take it away.
Thank you so much, Joe. James, I want to start this interview off by saying I think you have a very fashionable scarf.
Why, thank you.
And you look very comfy cozy, and I respect that.
I absolutely am. This is the comfiest I've been in a while, especially at tournament. So thank you for that.
Of course. Thank you. I feel like we've had a lot of fashion-forward players this weekend, and I think at the end of the day, being comfy allows you to perform better, right?
Exactly, yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about your performance, as we haven't seen you all weekend.
Yeah.
You told me that in round 11, you and Ashton played each other in Swiss.
Yes.
How did that matchup go?
So the first time we played, I was going about it a very, very different angle. I was playing to a King Gambit endgame. And normally with this team, like, kind of my philosophy the entire weekend was, if I'm not bringing King Gambit, I'm losing. A lot of my early games that I dropped, especially sets, I was not bringing King Gambit too. And I was like, all right, just bring King Gambit. You'll win every time. And for the most part, I did, except versus Ashton. So on the rerun, I was kind of like, okay, there's a lot of elements here, like a lot of moving pieces. Heartflame Ogerpon is especially like one of those Pokemon that I have to watch out for on my team. It's why I made a lot of the adjustments I made from Knoxville, because this is the same 6 that I brought there.
Yeah.
But it was very much like he played the way he did in our original set, game 1 of this set. He brought the Raging Bolt, he led Amoonguss, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna bring Landorus because Lando just Earth powers everything, and it does not care. It can Terra out of the weakness to Ice from Qianpao. It can tank a Rapid Strike or Shifu Surge It Strikes. It kind of helps that I'm Poison, not Steel, so there's no mind games whether or not he wants to go for a fighting attack or not. So I was pretty comfortable leading Rilla, Lando, no matter what. I was like, all right, just fake out sub, start spamming Earth Power, which worked out pretty well, all things considered. Game 2, he made a really, really good adjustment in bringing his own King Gambit. But I kind of got lucky with the roll on the end game. If Gouging Fire does not live that, I absolutely lose. So Ashton played phenomenally well. Anyway, like, even with my adjustment, he adapted perfectly. And I kind of feel bad for winning the way I did, like on such a sliver of health, but it's just the game we play sometimes.
It is the game we play sometime, and I find it interesting that you mentioned you ran the same 6 Pokemon in Knoxville.
Yes.
Why don't you talk about some of the changes you've made between that tournament and this one?
So I can't give away all of them because they're a little private, a little secret. But the big one that I made was I changed Rillaboom to Terrifier, and I changed Fluttermane to Choice Specs because, and I don't know whether or not I'm responsible for this. I'm gonna just say, because I ran Sash Fluttermane, I was just 252, 252 max. I was like, let's just go super aggro. And then the entirety of the format adapted. It was like Scarfer Shifu, a bunch of balance, pivot teams. So I was like, oh, this Fluttermane does not work anymore. It's super frail and cannot stand up against all these super powerful attacks. So my immediate idea was just, all right, go complete offense. Just do as much damage as you possibly can now. And overall, I think those changes have been super helpful. This tournament, I think, generally, I'm a player who likes to run the same team over and over and over again. If you saw me in 2023, I ran the same Goldango team for like 3 months in a row, and it kept working. But, you know, without the changes that I made over time, I wouldn't have been nearly as successful with it. It's kind of a similar story here where I just keep adjusting and adjusting and adjusting, and it's working out, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think a wise Pokemon player once said, if you just do a lot of damage, your opponent can't do damage, and then
Kind of
you're
true,
fine.
actually.
Yeah.
I might have to look into that after this.
Yeah, and honestly, it felt like your Landorus and your Gouging Fire kind of had that game plan against your set with Ashton, for sure.
So like, I would say Landorus is like, I think Lando is contender for the most like broken Pokemon right now. It does so much damage. It has very little like ways to condition it, to stop, especially with Fake Out, and like mitigating damage with Breaking Swipe, and Substitute is super like key to just kind of like keeping it going. And like there are games where it will just snowball because it's so good at what it does. But I would say going to Gouging Fire because I love this mon. I love it so much. I'm so happy I got back-to-back cuts with it. It fits like how I want to play perfectly. This super aggro play style with like kind of like, you know, this little defense sprinkled in. We play a little passive. We set up a bit. But overall, like a lot of people kind of dropped that after Knoxville because I always say can't confirm or deny. They saw me running it, and everyone was like, all right, now we can just beat it now. Like everyone knows how to beat it. The balance team that popped up beat it pretty hard. Raging Bolt was a problem. And it was kind of like, all right, how do I adjust to that? I still don't know how. But it's working. I love it. I love the way it plays. So I'm just really happy with the team, and I'm so glad I can bring it back to back with another top cut.
Yeah, I mean, if you're making it up as you go, I think you're doing a pretty good job, all things considered.
Cheers, too.
Best of luck in top 4. Do you have any shout-outs you want to give?
Absolutely. So first off, shouts to my mom and dad. Wouldn't be here without you guys. Oh my goodness. Shout outs to all the friends who made this team possible. I theoried with a ton of people. Just Kareem, Matthias, Trailer, 3 original people that helped me out with the team. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Shouts to Joe, Navjeet, Beck. I say even Ashton helped out a bit with like we were discussing things like the other night. Just shout outs to all my friends, and especially the people that convinced me to come here. I wasn't originally supposed to come here. I didn't get into UIC registration. I was super bummed out, and I was like, you know what, let's book this last minute. So I came here, and I'm doing fantastic. So really happy about that. And of course, shouts to my grandfather. I love you very much.
Oh, well, James, thank you so much for your time. I'll let you go get prepared for your top 4 match.
Thank you.
Casters, back to you.